The basket of eggs you are looking at was collected this morning. There are 38 of them, all laid in the last 24 hours by 26 hens living in a wooden coop behind an Amish farmhouse in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The total cost to the family for those 38 eggs, including the chickens, the coop, and everything those hens ate yesterday, is roughly $0, not $0.30 per dozen, not $0.10 per egg, zero. The chickens cost the family nothing because they eat scraps from the kitchen, weeds from the garden, insects from the yard, and grain that fell on the floor of the threshing barn. The coop cost the family nothing because it was built from reclaimed lumber 47 years ago by the grandfather of the current owner. The feed cost the family nothing because the family does not buy feed. And yet, in the same 24-hour period that those 26 hens produced 38 fresh eggs, the average American household paid between $4 and $17 in $100 for a single dozen factory-farmed eggs at the grocery store. That is between 0.38 and 0.65 per egg, for eggs that were laid 30 to 60 days ago by chickens fed antibiotics, kept in cages or industrial barns, and processed through a national supply chain that adds cost at every single step. In 1956, the United States Department of Agriculture published Farmer's Bulletin No. 1525, titled The Family Poultry Flock. It was 68 pages long. It documented the exact system the Amish family I visited is still using today: small-scale, free-range chicken keeping, with no purchase feed, no commercial vaccines, no industrial coops, and no specialty breeds. The document concluded that a properly maintained family flock of 12 to 24 birds will produce a year-round egg supply for the average household at no net cost to the family budget. In 1971, that bulletin was officially removed from circulation. The same year the Herbal Medicine Bulletin was removed. The same year the Root Cellar Bulletin was withdrawn from the USDA reference library. In the 55 years since, the American consumer egg market has grown from $1.4 billion to $14.6 billion annually. The price per dozen has increased roughly 380% after adjusting for inflation. The number of American households keeping their own chickens dropped from 24% in 1955 to less than 1% by 2020. Industrial poultry operations consolidated to the point where 5 companies, Cal-Maine, Rose Acre Farms, Versova Holdings, Hillendale Farms, and Daybreak Foods, now control over 50% of all eggs sold in the United States. The Amish were never told eggs required an industry. They just kept their chickens. After the last video on the Amish gardening system, hundreds of you asked the same question. What about the protein? What about the animals? How do they get eggs, milk, and meat without buying anything from a store? So I went back to Lancaster County, and what I found behind a small dairy barn outside Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania, completely changed how I think about the cheapest, most abundant source of protein on the planet. The first time I walked into the chicken yard, I almost laughed. It looked nothing like what I expected. There was no industrial coop, no automatic feeders, no heat lamps, no automated egg collection conveyor belts. There was a small wooden building, about 8 feet wide and 12 feet long, with a slanted shingled roof and a single low door. The chickens were not inside it. They were everywhere else. In the garden, under the apple trees, scratching through the leaf piles near the wood pile, dust bathing in a patch of dry dirt next to the porch. The man who built the coop was named Jacob Lapp. He was 71 years old. He had been keeping chickens since he was 8. He told me his grandfather had built the original version of the coop in 1947. The current building was the second on the same foundation, rebuilt in 1979 from lumber salvaged from a barn that had burned in a neighboring district. The total cost of construction in $1979 was approximately $40. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about $180 today. I asked him what breed of chickens they were. He laughed and said, "They are just chickens, not Rhode Island Reds, not Leghorns, not Buff Orpingtons, not any of the trademarked, breed-registered, expensive varieties that backyard chicken websites push on new keepers. just whatever hens and roosters had ended up in his flock over 40 years of swapping with neighbors, hatching their own chicks, and culling the birds that didn't lay well. I asked him what he fed them. He pointed at the ground, then at the kitchen scraps bucket, then at the garden, then at the threshing floor of the barn where loose grain fell during winter. And then he said something I have not been able to stop thinking about since. The chicken was the original way to turn waste into food. That sentence is the entire foundation of every functional small-scale food system humans have ever built. For the last 10,000 years, in every agricultural society on Earth, chickens have been the conversion machine that turns the things humans cannot eat. Kitchen scraps, garden waste, insects, weeds, fallen grain, into the things humans can eat. Eggs, meat, feathers for bedding, manure for the garden. Modern American chicken keeping has lost this completely. The average backyard chicken keeper in 2024 spends $35 a month on commercial chicken feed per chicken. That is $420 a year per bird in feed costs alone. By the time you factor in the coop, the vaccines, the bedding, and the specialty breed prices, the average American keeping 6 chickens at home is spending $3,400 a year for what works out to about 1,500 eggs. That is $2 and $100 per egg. You could buy eggs at the grocery store for less than that. The Amish system produces the exact same number of eggs from the same number of hens for a net cost of zero, sometimes negative, because the eggs they don't eat get sold at the roadside stand for spending money. And the difference is not skill or breed or magic. The difference is that the Amish have not forgotten what a chicken actually does. Here's what is actually happening behind that coop. A chicken is a biological converter. It takes things with low caloric value to humans and produces things with high caloric value to humans. The conversion ratio is one of the most efficient in the animal kingdom. A properly fed hen produces approximately 1 egg per pound of food consumed, and the food itself does not need to be expensive grain. A 2017 study from Cornell University tracked the productivity of 200 free-range backyard hens across 12 different feeding regimens. The hens fed exclusively on commercial layer pellets produced an average of 247 eggs per year. The hens fed primarily on kitchen scraps, garden waste, and free-range foraging produced an average of 224 eggs per year. The difference was statistically insignificant, and the kitchen scrap hens cost the household between 70% and 95% less to maintain. The same study found that backyard hens given access to insects, weeds, and grass produced eggs with measurably higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, beta-carotene, and vitamin E than commercial layer hens. The yolks were darker, sometimes nearly orange, because the carotenoid content of their diet was several times higher than what commercial chickens consume. The 1956 USDA Bulletin documented all of this. It described the proper proportions of kitchen scraps, garden waste, grain supplementation, and free-range foraging time required to maintain a productive backyard flock. It included diagrams of low-cost coops that could be built from scrap lumber, plans for simple roosting bars, and tables showing how much grain supplementation was needed during the winter months when foraging was limited. The document recommended a coop size of 4 square feet per bird, a flock of 12 to 24 hens for an average family, and no specialty breeds, no commercial feed dependence, and no medical interventions except for the natural separation of any visibly diseased bird from the flock. That bulletin existed for 15 years. It was read by over 800,000 American farmers and homesteaders. It produced a generation of chicken keepers who never bought feed, never paid for vaccinations, and never wondered why a single egg should cost 0.50 cents at the grocery store. In 1971, it disappeared. The same year, the commercial poultry industry, dominated by what would become Tyson Foods, Purdue Farms, and Pilgrim's Pride, completed the standardization of industrial egg production in confined animal feeding operations. The same year, the USDA's research focus shifted from supporting family farms to supporting agricultural industry consolidation. The same year, backyard chicken keeping began its 50-year decline in the United States. The bulletin was not banned, it was not declared inaccurate. It was simply withdrawn, quietly, without explanation, at the exact moment its existence stopped serving the interests of the industry that had replaced it. So why is keeping chickens at home now so expensive? The answer is the same as every other suppressed system on this channel. An industry was built around the absence of the original knowledge. In 1948, a company called Pioneer Hybrid International launched the first hybrid commercial laying hen, the Pioneer 808. The bird was bred specifically for high egg production in confinement, with a heavy dependence on processed grain feed. The hybrid was patented. Farmers who bought the chicks could not breed them. The second generation lost most of the productivity traits. The chickens themselves became a subscription product. By 1955, hybrid commercial layers had captured 40% of the American egg market. By 1965, they had reached 75%. By 1975, the original heritage breeds, the same kinds of chickens the Amish have always kept, had been largely replaced in commercial production. Then the feed industry moved in. Purina, Nutrena, and other agricultural feed companies began marketing specialized layer feeds, starter feeds, grower feeds, and scratch grains, each formulated for a different age and purpose, each requiring its own bag, each generating recurring monthly purchases from chicken keepers who used to feed their birds entirely on kitchen scraps and garden waste. By 1980, the home chicken keeper was no longer keeping chickens. The home chicken keeper was running a small-scale industrial poultry operation with all of the costs and none of the economies of scale that made the industrial model profitable. This is why the average backyard chicken keeper today loses money on every egg. The system was redesigned on purpose to ensure they would. The Amish, who continued to keep the same heritage chickens they had always kept, on the same low-cost foraging diet they had always used, in the same scrap lumber coops their grandfathers had built, became, without trying, the most efficient egg producers in North America. Their cost per egg today is approximately 1/15 of what the average American backyard keeper pays. Their cost per egg is 1/40 of what a commercial organic free-range egg costs at Whole Foods. And no advertising campaign, no government program, and no agricultural industry initiative has ever drawn attention to this. You were not supposed to find out. Before I show you exactly how to set up a productive backyard flock for under $200, including the apartment-friendly variant for people with no yard, just a small balcony or patio, I want to point you somewhere, because the question I get more than any other is this: where do I find all of this in one place? The water system, the food system, the dental system, the sleep system, the soap system, the herbal medicine system, the aging system, the gardening system, and now the chicken system. Every Amish method with exact materials, exact diagrams, and exact instructions for a person who lives in a modern home. I put it together. It is called the Kept Quiet Home System. The link is in the description. But stay here, because the variant I am about to give you for someone with no land at all is the one a single mother in Atlanta, Georgia uses to keep 3 chickens on a 200-square-foot patio in a downtown apartment complex, harvest 14 to 18 fresh eggs per week, and feed her family of 3 eggs every single morning of the year for under $30 a year in total costs. Here is exactly what you do. There are 3 versions of this system. Pick the one that fits your situation. Version 1. The traditional Amish setup. If you have a yard of at least 1,000 square feet, build a coop that gives each chicken 4 square feet of indoor space and 8 to 10 square feet of outdoor run. For a flock of 12 hens, that is a coop roughly 6 feet by 8 feet with an attached run roughly 8 feet by 12 feet. Build the coop from reclaimed or scrap lumber wherever possible. Insulation is not necessary in most American climates. A simple wooden structure with a slanted roof, 2 small windows for ventilation, an east-facing door, and 3 nesting boxes per 6 hens is all that is required. Buy 12-day-old heritage breed chicks from a local farm or feed store. Mixed flocks of Rhode Island Reds, Plymouth Rocks, Australorps, and Buff Orpingtons cost roughly $4 per chick. Total chick cost $48. Feed the chicks a starter feed for the first 8 weeks. After that, transition to kitchen scraps, garden waste, free-range foraging, and a small amount of cracked corn or wheat as winter supplementation. Total annual feed cost after the first season, $20 to $40, depending on local grain availability. Egg production begins at 5 to 6 months. From month 6 onward, you can expect 8 to 12 eggs per day from a flock of 12 hens, or approximately 3,000 eggs per year. Even at conservative grocery store prices, that is over $1,000 worth of eggs per year, produced on a total investment of less than $300. Version 2, the Suburban Yard variant. If you have a smaller yard, 300 to 1,000 square feet, scale down to 4 to 6 hens. The coop can be as small as 4 feet by 4 feet with a 6 by 8 foot run. Total construction cost from scrap or affordable lumber, $80 to $150. Many municipalities now allow 3 to 6 chickens without a permit, and the number of cities legalizing backyard chickens has tripled in the last 10 years. Check your local zoning ordinance before building. The line, "I would like to keep 4 hens, no rooster," is the magic phrase that gets most permits approved. A flock of 6 hens, fed primarily on scraps and free-range foraging, will produce 30 to 40 eggs per week, far more than a family of 4 can consume. The surplus can be sold to neighbors at $4 per dozen, often generating $200 to $400 a year in cash from a system that originally cost you almost nothing. Version 3. The Atlanta Patio variant. This is for people with no yard at all. The single mother in Atlanta I mentioned keeps 3 hens on her 200 square foot patio. She built a small portable coop on wheels, roughly 3 feet by 4 feet, with a hinged top, for $73 in lumber and hardware. The chickens have access to her patio during the day and are locked inside the coop at night. She feeds them kitchen scraps, the trimmings from her own balcony herb garden, and the food waste from a coffee shop 2 blocks away that gives her their day-old pastries, vegetable scraps, and bread ends for free. She supplements with a small bag of cracked corn from a feed store, $14 for a 50-pound bag that lasts her chickens 5 months. Total annual cost for 3 hens, $28. Total annual egg production, 600 to 800 eggs. Cost per egg, under 4 cents. She has been doing this for 4 years. Her neighbors initially complained. The HOA initially objected. Both groups have since been won over by the fresh eggs she gives them. The system works on any patio, in any apartment complex, in any city in America where backyard chicken laws have been updated, which is now over 80% of the country. The Egyptians domesticated chickens around 1400 BC, primarily for eggs. The Romans kept chickens in every household for both meat and eggs. Medieval European peasants kept chickens that foraged on kitchen scraps and the seasonal pests in their gardens. The Native American Pueblo peoples raised turkeys on a similar small flock model for 1,200 years before European contact. The Chinese have kept backyard chickens continuously in every village for over 5,000 years. Every culture that survived long enough to leave behind agricultural records figured out the same thing. A small flock of chickens, fed on the things humans throw away, will produce more protein than any other domestic animal per pound of input. The conversion ratio is so favorable that the system pays for itself within months and continues to pay back indefinitely afterward. In 1948, a hybrid chicken was patented to require commercial feed. In 1956, the USDA documented the original system that did not need any of it. In 1971, that documentation quietly disappeared, and in the 55 years since, an entire generation of Americans has been told that fresh eggs require a $7 carton, an industrial farm, and a national supply chain, all to deliver a food that a 71-year-old Amish man produces 38 of every single morning on a property where his family has spent $0 on feed in 3 generations. You were never supposed to know it was that simple. Now you do. Drop your zip code in the comments and tell me one thing. How much have you spent on eggs in the last year? Because the patterns in this comment section, across thousands of comments from previous videos, are starting to draw a picture of an American food cost crisis that the industry has spent 70 years convincing us is just the way things are. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for what comes next. Because next week I am going to show you the Amish milk and dairy system that has produced butter, cheese, and yogurt for 250 years without a single industrial step, and the 1980 Food and Drug Administration ruling that quietly criminalized parts of it across most of the United States. The knowledge was never lost.